party. Anybody got any ideas about what kind of party this is? Oh, yeah. We're going to cut into this cake. It's going to be pink or blue, right? It's a lie right from the very beginning. If this really was going to reveal something about this kid, there would be inside this cake a little plastic penis or a little plastic vulva. Yes, you heard those words right here in this fellowship hall. And you're going to hear a lot more of them, so just buckle your seatbelt. Because you cannot talk about the science of gender without talking about sexual anatomy. All right? So at this point, people are telling great stories about their kids. And there's nothing wrong with stories. We all tell stories about who our kids are going to be. But I'll tell you, in 41% of trans kids' lives, they will spend part of their time thinking about suicide. Suicide will come to be a very close friend to a lot of trans kids. Because if it gets to this point, I always have a way out. People always talk about how horrible this idea of suicide is. Well, it wasn't for me. It was one of my primary coping skills. I always thought, I'm in control of this, and I can do this. And I think in a lot of ways it helped me survive as long as I did. But these are our kids. This is what our kids are dealing with. And by the way, this statistic is an old statistic. If we took it now, and the Trevor Project has done that, the Trevor Project is now saying that in states, there are as many as 70% of kids that are talking and spending time thinking about how to choose suicide as an option. How about this? 43% of our kids are homeless. This is going to go up dramatically, particularly in states where the laws have gotten so harsh. Why are these kids homeless? They're rejected by family, by faith community, by schools, by their entire community. Right now, by their country. By their country. Yeah. This is what America looks like to me. To other trans people here in the audience, this is what America looks like to us. And the red parts are do not go places. Do not go. Yeah, you may go, you may travel. I mean, Montana, Montana just, governor signed a bathroom bill. So trans people can't go to the state of Montana and use the bathroom. Any public places. Go camping, stop rest areas, that's illegal now. You can't go to the bathroom there. Florida and Texas are basically do not travel states. Absolutely, do not go there if you are trans or if you have trans loved ones with you. I get questions from families who say, it'll be okay. I'll take my kid, we'll leave their treatment at home, we won't take testosterone, we're not going to take estrogen with us, it'll all be fine, we're just going to go and see our family. That's fine, except, what if you have a medical emergency? What if your kid has a medical emergency? They end up in the emergency room, and who they identify as does not match their sexual anatomy. Then these kids basically are at risk, as are you as a parent. Because in some of these states, Children's Protective Service are authorized to remove your child from you if you are supporting in any way or affirming trans existence. So think about this. Think about this. All right. Here are some of the bills, the bathroom laws, the athletic participation bans, gender-affirming care bans. In one state, it's illegal to be in public and be trans. So as I stand here, you could all have me arrested. In some states, you could get $10,000 from me because I have to pay you in order for me to be standing here. Something to contemplate. So, I want you to have accurate information, and we're going to start by talking about conception. At the point when the egg and the old sperm come together and begin to create an embryo. That's an exciting time, isn't it? That's an exciting time. And it's really simple. It's not hard to understand. There's XX and there's XY chromosomes. This is the 23rd pair of chromosomes in this developing embryo, 23rd pair. What does the 23rd pair do? It determines sexual anatomy. I did not say it determined gender, did I? Because it doesn't. It determines sexual anatomy sometimes. Yeah, I hear you. Not interesting? What does he mean by that? Well, it's kind of intriguing because mom contributes the X chromosome, right? Dad determines sexual anatomy. Dad contributes that Y chromosome. Fascinating, isn't it? So, you have an XX girl, you have an XY boy. Wow, that was simple, wasn't it? Can y'all see that in the back? I know. That's why you shouldn't sit in the back. I see you back there. I do see you. I was going to suggest you move up, but I thought, no, that's not my job. Well, I can tell you there are a whole lot of X's and Y's on this slide up here. And what they're telling us is that XY is way down there, XX is over here, but to the right of that is what? What the hell is that? XO. Dad slept through the whole thing. He just did not even participate. This is a baby, you ever heard of Turner syndrome? This is a baby that has Turner syndrome. And what that 23rd pair of chromosomes does for this child is it affects their development. And with these kids, it actually affects their lifespan. These kids don't live far beyond adolescence. And that's what XO is. But look at all this stuff in the middle. Anybody ever heard of Klinefelter syndrome? Yeah, Klinefelter's, yeah. Klinefelter's is typically someone who's extremely tall, really large hands. And again, the 23rd pair of chromosomes affect all the characteristics that this person has in terms of sexual development. Now, you'll see in the middle there a term intersex. How many of you know the term intersex? Wow. See, you don't need me. You don't need me because you're way there. What does intersex mean? Well, a lot of people think it's the same as hermaphrodite. Remember hermaphrodite, that term we used to all use? And what we meant by that was somebody who has a vulva, a vagina, and a penis. Trifecta. Except that is extremely rare. Extremely rare. Because really what's more common is some mixture of those sexual reproductive systems. What I'm talking about in an extreme is that someone can have the internal reproductive system of male and the external genitalia of females, and vice versa. Why? Here's the other words you'll remember when you leave here. Nature loves diversity. And my friends, we are diverse creatures. And it's not just us. It's not just our species. Every species will demonstrate some examples of this. Another form of intersex is a baby born with ambiguous genitals. You can't tell whether it's a penis or a vulva. Wow, what about that? So, not as simple as you might think. But let's move on. We're not done yet. In every new cell that an embryo creates in the building of this fetus, there is DNA. What does DNA do? DNA is the master plan. I like to think of DNA as a little manager that sits there and says, all right, you're a group of new cells. You're going to be a heart. So you're going to go to the area of the chest and hang out in this new fetus. And that's cool because these cells, they beat. The heck? Yeah, they beat. But they all beat to their own drummer. So they go to the area of where the heart's going to be, and something happens. Something happens, and all of a sudden they decide to sync up. And that, my friend, is the development of the heart. I'm really fond of the gonad cells myself. There are about 40 cells that are gonad cells. And they go to the area of sexual anatomy, right? Gonads, testicles, ovaries. So their job is you go hang out in the area of the genitals and await further instruction. They're called indifferent gonad cells. I don't care. I don't know what I'm going to be, but I'm here. Wow, waiting for something else to happen. Genes, switches. Switch on, switch off. Very important gene in this, my friends, because right as you look at that beautiful creature, there's no genitalia, because the default is female anatomy. Hang on to that, folks. That's important news for you. Women, you are the default. Because in order for the male reproductive system to form, a certain gene has to turn on. It's called the SRY gene. I like to say it's the sorry you're a dude gene. Because when this turns on, the male reproductive system will form. If it doesn't turn on, what's the default? Yeah, female. So, how does this play out in real life? Well, the dad contributes the Y chromosome. The dad also contributes the SRY gene. Okay? Now, sometimes dad contributes the Y chromosome, but the SRY gene isn't on that chromosome. Why? Nature loves... Come on, diversity. Yes, yes. And this is one way it happens. Look at this. SRY gene doesn't turn on. 9 months go by. That baby's growing, born. That baby's born. Baby's presented to the parents. You have a baby? Absolutely, with a surprise. Because chromosomally, this baby is XY. SRY gene is on that Y chromosome, but doesn't turn on. There are no guarantees. There are no guarantees. Same thing happens, all right? Now, it gets even more interesting. SRY gene only partially turns on. So, you may have some parts of the male sexual reproductive system, but not all of them. You may have a penis that does not grow to the length that is our standard. Even as a newborn, we have standards, okay? You don't meet the standard, so basically you have partial male reproductive system, and we call that intersex. Thank you. We call that intersex. Or let's really blow your mind, because sometimes on the XX chromosome, that's a little girl, remember? Dad throws an SRY gene on an X chromosome. You cannot rely on anything, people. Seriously. Seriously. So what happens? That gene turns on. 9 months later. It's a little girl, baby, XX. What are this child's genitors? They're male. If that SRY turns on, the male reproductive system will form. Wow. How's that for something? Well, let me tell you something. What we're talking about here occurs in the first 14 weeks of development. Before a lot of women even know they're pregnant, the sexual anatomy is forming. Between 6 and 14 weeks of in utero development, sexual anatomy forms and is done. So we talked about cells and genes and stuff, but at about 8, 9 weeks of in utero development, little XY babies get something called a testosterone bath. They get a surge of testosterone. What's the role of that testosterone? It's to masculinize the baby and to complete the sexual reproductive system of the male. Now help me here. Can you help me understand why maybe there might be some differences as a result of this? Because the hormones are controlled by the pituitary and the adrenal gland. And the secretion of hormones mean that you got to have the right hormones, whatever that means. You've got to have the appropriate amount at a certain time to a capable recipient. Have I lost you yet? I count 4 opportunities here for variations. The last one's really interesting because sometimes the fetus will not accept testosterone. This is an XY baby, my friends. The manual, the manual for developing babies says you will receive the testosterone that is given to you. And some of these little twerps have not read the manual. They don't react to testosterone, nor may they react to testosterone the rest of their lives. It's not for certain. It's not for certain. Just to give you some ideas, some infants who are males will have no reaction to testosterone. Some will have a partial reaction back in the land of intersex. Wow, here's an interesting example of what we're talking about. A lot of men have hypospadia. Hypospadia is where the urethra exits somewhere other than the tip of the penis. Who knew? 1 in every 200 boys will have this condition. A lot of it's accompanied with a bend in the penis. This is an example of development stopping at some point. The hormone stops being produced. Something about the genetic transmission stops being done. It's like you're building a project and all your tools stop working in the middle of the project. Well, the project is exactly how it was when the tools quit. That's the same thing here, my friends. That's the same thing here. And when this occurs with an infant, the urethra may exit on the underside of the penis. It may exit in the abdominal wall. Okay? So these are differences of sexual development. There are some 66 of them that have been classified in the ICD. Differences. Some babies are born without a penis. Some babies are born without a vagina. Some babies are born with 1 ovary and 1 testicle. Some babies are born with no testicles. We are a varied species, my friend. And there are no written guarantees. Development is atypical. Abnormal, happens too often to really say this is abnormal because these kinds of variations happen about as often as people who have red hair. Think about that. Yeah, you probably know someone. And if you do know someone, I'll lay you odds that that person's not going to talk to you about it. Because this is very shameful in families. Very shameful. And if you're pregnant and you're going to one of those what to expect when you're expecting, or you're reading that book called What to Expect When You're Expecting, you won't find any information about this. We don't talk about this. So when an intersex baby is born, it is a crisis in the delivery room. Okay? Stay with me here. I'm not done yet. This is pretty interesting too. Steffany, how am I doing with time? All right, we're going to go as far as we can go. XX, I want you to get this because this is relevant right now in our culture. These are babies that are designated chromosomally female, but they have a condition called congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which means they overproduce testosterone. This can just occur naturally. I learned recently of a really interesting contributing factor to this. 15 to 20% of women have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which means that their ovaries don't secrete estrogen in the way that is typical. What they do, though, is they secrete more testosterone. There's more testosterone in their bodies. And what's really curious is that this syndrome is one of the most frequent causes of infertility. But some women can get pregnant with this syndrome. But if they do, the fact that they secrete more testosterone gets transmitted to the fetus, the developing fetus. So what you will have is, if you have an XX fetus with a mom with PCOS, this mom may be priming this little girl to overproduce testosterone. Now, shall we talk about trans athletes? That's all I'm going to say about it, because that would be an hour's worth. But anyway, I just want to tell you that there are reasons among us where a lot of us, elite athletes, elite women runners, often have excess testosterone. They're not trans. They're XX. But there are so many of them that they are despised, and they're in all of your living rooms, those trans athletes. Okay? All right. Intersex. I want to quickly say this because you have to know this. What we do in this country when an intersex baby is born, and I'm talking about a baby with ambiguous genitals. I can't tell whether this is a boy or girl. Clitoris is too large, penis too small. Well, okay then, what do you do? What do you do? I can get your chromosomes, but as you know at this point, that chromosomes are not the whole story here. They're not going to tell us. And besides, what are the options? Well, what we like to do in this country is we like to do something called normalization surgery. What is normalization surgery? Well, we're not good at creating penises. We don't build penises very well. So if you have a baby with ambiguous genitals, odds are they're going to remove a part of that tissue. That clitoris that is too large is going to be sized. It's going to be sized to be typical. What do you cut off when you start cutting off parts of the clitoris? Boy, sensitivity. I don't know, maybe it's this kind of an audience, I'm not sure. But what's the role of the clitoris? Wow, that was pretty loud up here in the front seat by the head of something or other. Yes. So people who have this surgery often never have an orgasm. And a lot of times they never know why they don't have an orgasm, because no one tells them that this surgery occurred on them. Now, someone said the other day, well, that's historical information. No, my friend, it is not historical information. Somewhere in America today, this is happening. This surgery has been ruled genital mutilation by the United Nations. We do what we condemn Africa for doing, and we still do it. There you are. Now, I can't tell you how often, because nobody writes this stuff down. This is disguised in medical records. It's called cosmetic procedures. And a lot of these kids never know it, but when they get to be 3, 4, or 5, when gender becomes apparent, they know that what's in their pants does not match their sense of gender. Because, all right, we'll skip that one, Steffany. Okay, I'm going fast here. Because the star of the show hasn't shown up yet. At 14 weeks, sexual anatomy is done. Okay? What part of the brain has to do with our sense of gender? All right, you people got to start thinking about your brain. Use your brain to think about your brain. That's the thing about it, all right? Because the frontal lobe of the brain is all about where your personality lives. Someone has a terrible head injury. Someone has lobotomy, and their personality changes. So gender is like a manifestation of our sense of ourselves as gendered beings, okay? We don't know a lot about the brain, except that the frontal lobe isn't even developing before halfway through the pregnancy. Get it? Sexual anatomy and the brain aren't talking to each other yet. Interesting, isn't it? There it is, that lovely thing. I like the idea that we all have those colors in our head. That's really cool. Okay, I'm going to skip that one. But it's small wonder that our sense of ourselves and our sexual anatomy may just not match. Our brain may not have been masculinized by that testosterone bath that happened. Well, that's going to have something to do with how we feel about ourselves, because the role of testosterone in utero is to masculinize the brain. Well, maybe that little baby doesn't respond to testosterone. We know that now. Okay, I'm going to skip here. I want to say this right now. This is another take-home message. I know you have a lot of assignments. We may gender up. Gender changed dramatically after World War II, when all the service people came home. Capitalism was really off and running. My goodness. And somebody had a brilliant idea of a way to make money. Well, let's assign the different sexual anatomy a color. And let's do clothing. Let's do toys. Let's do paint for rooms, right? So baby can come into this world with an absolute instruction map. And that instruction map basically says, choose these options if your birth certificate says this. All right? We made it up. And we could change it. And we've got a generation of kids coming on right now who are hell-bent. They are hell-bent on engineering the change that I applaud personally. Kids who identify as non-binary, some of my favorite people. I love having conversations with these kids, because why would I want to do that? Why would I want to be one or the other? I mean, we're not one or the other. Steffany, I am really concerned that you don't have a dress on today. Disappointed? Maybe I would say I'm disappointed, you know? Where's your allegiance to your gender? Seriously, people. Yeah, we made it up. All right, just the desire to be one's true self never goes away. How do I know that? Remember the trans kid at 5 that I told you about? That trans kid had to be really patient, because that kid did not transition until the age of 63. Crazy, isn't it? You know, Constance, you got, yeah. It was great. You know, I retired from Skagit Valley College, where I was teaching psychology, and, you know, everybody that was retiring was playing golf and going on trips. I couldn't get to Seattle fast enough to find a doctor who would help me transition. I called the doctor and said, you know, I knew she had a waiting list, so I emailed her and just said, I know you have a waiting list, I can wait, but am I too old for this? And she called me. She called me on the phone, and she said, well, if you're too old, then the two 80-year-olds that I talked to, yeah, it's going to be bad news for them. And she said, I said, look, it's cool. I know you have a waiting list. I'll wait. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. She said to me, she said, I think you've waited long enough. Yeah, life-changing moment. So anyway, my friends, I offer you this. I have a ton of resources that go with this PowerPoint. And I am happy to send this PowerPoint to anybody that wants it. If you want to do an email list, I'm happy to send it. The more we get this information out, the better. Use it in good health. There's some movies on here you ought to watch. I wrote a book that goes with, a booklet that goes with this talk. It's free. You don't have to pay a thing. It's free. It's because there's so much information that gets thrown at you here that I really wanted you to be able to take something home and try and digest this a little bit. So I am here to answer questions that you might have. There's so much we haven't talked about. Cindy Myatt, Reverend Cindy Myatt, is my partner in crime and other things. And she can answer your questions just as well. So we both will be here to talk with anybody that has an interest afterwards.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Linden. And as we extinguish the chalice, I want to celebrate and honor the congregation that you are that would welcome this information and who want very much to honor the diversity of all of our humanness. And now, let's circle round.
Freedom for all.
There will be question time here at the front after circle round.
Oh,